Australia has some significant Irish roots, as we all know. There's no need for a history lesson there. All those who came here, though, with the First Fleet were being banished for their crimes to the great southern land, never to return. Who'd want them back anyway? But in more recent times, we've benefited from the migration of Irish tradespeople to Australia who've been filling gaps in the demand for tradies. And don't we have a demand? Well, this time, the Irish want their people back. Mary Lou McDonald, Ireland's opposition leader, who's tipped to become the next PM of Ireland, mind you, has embarked on a mission to bring Irish Australian tradies back home. The head of the political arm of the Provisional IRA, Sinn Fein, addressed the National Press Club in Canberra yesterday to speak directly to young, working Irish men and women. And I'm pleased to say Mary Lou McDonald is now doing the same right here on Sky News. Mary Lou, welcome to Australia.
Thank you so much. I'm delighted to be here. Mind you, I left an oncoming heat wave in Dublin to get rained on in Perth in Western Australia. But as Boris Johnson might say, them's the breaks, yeah?
Yes, exactly. We're upset about it too, don't you worry. How many handy Irish tradespeople have made the trek to Australia to be on working visas and contribute in that industry? Do you know?
I don't have an exact figure, and despite your description of my trip is actually to reconnect with people, to report on progress in Ireland, which is considerable. We're heading into a very, very exciting period of time where I believe Ireland will be reunified and we're going to make history. But as part of that discussion, we have been talking about the experiences of Irish people here in Australia, the incredible opportunities that are afforded to people, and Irish people are well skilled, well educated, and they have a work ethic like no other. And many of them will remain here in Australia, make their contribution, live full lives, and we're very proud of that. But there is a section of that population who will want to come home to Ireland at some point. In fact, there's a section of people who feel quite badly, who feel hurt, who feel let down at the fact that they had to leave Ireland in the first place. And my remarks really, in the first instance, have been directed at that group of people, because I happen to believe that every worker, every young person should have choice. And if the best option and the best life is to be here in Sydney or in Melbourne or out west, so be it, and more luck to them. But anybody who wants to go home should have a reasonable expectation that they can return to Ireland, that they can contribute there, and that they can live a good standard of living. So that's my commitment as leader of the opposition. I've committed to those Irish people to actually create the circumstances in which they will have that choice. And then, of course, as you've remarked, there's huge competition now for skills, not least in the trades, the tradies, as you call them in this part of the world. And yes, of course, I'm encouraging those that want to come home to come home at some stage, because we're going to need them. We need to build our houses, build our services. Ditto here in Australia. So I guess there's a bit of a trading war for the tradies, for these incredible skill set. And can I say to them, I think that's good news for them, that augurs well for their work opportunities. Well,
exactly. It's like a tug of war. And you can't blame them either, because we usually have sensational weather, we've got spectacular beaches, and a lot in common, and some wonderful history. Maybe after a few days here, Mary Lou, you might want to stay as well. We won't get you back.
Well, who's to say? I mean, that sounds like an offer to me. I'm not sure if it's to take over your job in studio or to run for election here. But look, I understand you don't have to explain to any Irish person what the pull and the appeal of Australia is. And as you remarked, like historically, our people came over in bondage and chains, to penal colonies for crimes against the empire. It's so different now. People come and they bring with them an abundance of energy and skill, and that is terrific. And to Irish people, I'd say, while you're here, if you're here for a while, make it a good time, enjoy the sunshine, the lifestyle, the opportunities, that real sense of fair go in this country, which I think is incredible and admirable. And then to those who will want to come home, my job as leader of the opposition is to compete, to be in government, to shape public policy, and to ensure that everybody who wants to come home has a real option for that. And who knows, there may even be Aussies who might want to make the reverse voyage back to the Emerald Isle.
How is the Emerald Isle coping with pandemics and inflation and disruptions to supply chains? Very similar to Australia, I'd imagine.
Yes, certainly. I think the combination of Brexit, which has been hugely disruptive for all of Europe, but particularly for Ireland, as you might appreciate, and then of course this awful pandemic, which hasn't gone away, it's still with us, caused precisely the type of disruption in Ireland as you've experienced here. People's family life, their work life, business life disrupted quite dramatically in Ireland. I mean, we had very prolonged and very strict sanctions and shutdowns. So people have coped with that, I think, admirably. Our frontline workers have been astonishing. Retail workers, healthcare workers, transport workers, I pay tribute to all of them. It's been a really tough time. It's been hard for our young people and our older people, but we found our way through it. And actually, economically speaking, we have recovered reasonably well. And then along came the war in Ukraine, Putin's criminal bombardment of Ukraine and everything that has meant in terms of energy supply, worry about energy security, and of course an inflationary spiral, which was on the way anyhow, but undoubtedly has been exacerbated by the war in Ukraine. Yeah. So working families and people now are struggling. That's the truth, and they need a lot of support. We need a lot of good politics and positive leadership to mind people and to get people through what I think is going to be a tough autumn and a tough winter. We'll be at that point when, of course, you will be having your summer. But I think the dynamic is the same here in Australia as it is not just in Ireland, but in fact right across Europe.
Mary Lou McDonald, all the very best at the next election. And if you do happen to stay a little bit longer, remember, you've got to go home. You know, you can't get sucked in by the weather or the beaches, all right?
I promise. Listen, I just hope I see some weather other than rain. What can I tell you? That's the point I'm at.
I'm with you.
Fingers crossed.
Mary Lou McDonald, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
OK, there you have it. Now, that's quite amazing when you think about it. There she is. She comes from a summer and she comes to Australia and it's cold and it's raining and all that.